Welcome to another Mark Steyn Show. Coming up, if you like prize-winning calves at the 4-H barn at the county fair, boy, have we got a prize-winning calf for you. Whoa! Don't go there, girlfriend. And a new book published this very day on America's biggest serial killer, Kermit Gosnell. And if you've never heard of Kermit Gosnell, well, that's exactly the way the media want it. Kermit Gosnell was an infanticidal maniac. He enjoyed killing babies, newborn babies struggling for life. He kept at least 20 jars filled with souvenirs of his slaughter, dozens and dozens of little baby feet. And yet most Americans have never heard his name. I hope that changes with this new book titled simply Gosnell. Let's meet the authors, my fellow Irishmen, Ann McElhinney and Phelim McAleer. Great to have you with us. This is a horrible story, and as I said, I think people would have noticed it after a minute or two. You have just a wee slight touch of an accent. You don't have that authentic Idaho accent that I have, but it's in a strange way. You're writing this book. It ought to be something where there should have been all kinds of big American writers stampeding to cover this story, and yet this is it. This is the book on it.
Talk about In Cold Blood. This is better than In Cold Blood.
Yeah.
And the story, I mean, he's America's biggest serial killer. It's not 1950 or 1960. He was convicted in 2013.
Right.
So yeah,
and the details are crazy. You can't make this stuff up. This is exactly the kind of thing that normally sells newspapers. These stories are, we talked about this before. I mean, the details are just horrific.
Right.
Newspapers usually report on this kind of thing. Usually report on crime. This is a crime story like no other, involving lots and lots of characters, not just one character. It's also, there's so much about this that should have been reported and wasn't.
And full of incredibly vivid novelistic details. Just to put, I mean, for me, there's really three issues here. There's the man and his crimes. There's the way the crimes were facilitated by various levels of government bureaucracy. And then there's the way that the media declined to cover the crimes. But just as a starting point, Anne, you say the two of you come from basically the last country in the Western world to get on the abortion bandwagon, as it were. But you say, Anne, that you were never one of these people who was a big pro-life person. You found yourself faintly creeped out by the goody-goodiness of pro-life people until this case came up.
That's right. I mean, I was a bit, I found pro-lifers very, very, very religious, very activisty. They were kind of in your face. I didn't trust them, and I didn't trust their images. And they had these horrific images, and I thought, you know what? They've been photoshopped. Right. And that all changed for me because of the fact that this case, what's unique about this case and kind of extraordinary is that the jury who had to sit through this case were shown picture upon picture upon picture, each one of which I have seen now. And these pictures aren't from any activists. No. These are from the ME's office. These are the photographs of the 47 dead babies that were discovered on the premises. And what is most extraordinary about them and what affected the jury an awful lot about this was that while he had murdered many of these children, some of them he hadn't, some of them had been properly aborted. What we do know is that it's completely legal for any of those children, any of those bodies I saw, to have been murdered in the womb. And that would be fine. That's what's called a legal abortion in America. And when you see those bodies, when you see those babies, I would challenge anyone to stand up and say they would defend that.
And there's also, the minute you have this legalistic definition, whereby essentially if you cave in the skull while the rest of the body is outside the vaginal canal, that's perfectly legal. But if you wait till the skull is out before you plunge your scissors in, that's infanticide. And the finest legal minds in America have come up with this fine distinction. And as we see, actually on the ground, it doesn't matter, because in Kermit Gosnell's abortion clinic, people essentially were sitting on the toilet. The baby was falling out into the toilet bowl and then be killed splashing around in the water. All these clever legal distinctions in the end meant nothing. meant nothing.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, I mean, also in Pennsylvania, you're allowed to have an abortion up to 6 months. But 6 months and 1 day, it was illegal. Right. But actually, you're right. On the ground in these clinics, none of this matters. It's all behind closed doors. And as you say, the bureaucracy allowed it to happen. They facilitated it. The first person really to start the bandwagon of turning a blind eye was a Republican governor, Tom Ridge. Right. He was elected as a moderate pro-choice.
Yeah, who's the Republican everyone always claims to want, because he's fiscally conservative but liberal on social issues. And in effect, he helped facilitate a great evil here, because he put healthcare bureaucrats essentially beyond the reach of.
Yeah, he allowed for 17 years. I mean, it kind of beggars belief. For 17 years, no one crossed the threshold of this house of horrors, of this place where all this stuff was going on. For 17 years, despite the fact that 2 women died. Samika Shaw, 22 years old, an African American. Right. And then Carnamaya Munger, a Bhutanese refugee. I mean, you know, if you were going to choose and travel, the most pathetic, most vulnerable, most in need of protection. Well, here you go. And this is, it's very funny. And in the book we make a big point of this. This is no backwater. No. This is progressive Pennsylvania. Right. You know, they're so proud of their progressive, thing. And here's what they did. So 17 years. Samika Shaw, fine, let's just leave it. But if you and I had been in some scummy little burger joint, having a burger, and you had a little tummy upset afterwards, the army would have come out from the health department in Harrisburg to work out what your tummy upset was about. But here was a dead woman, 2 dead women, and nothing. Zero.
Nothing. And they were as you say, they were the ones who make, as you know, because you're in Hollywood. Progressives, liberals are all about the narrative. These are victims from central casting.
Yes.
A Bhutanese refugee. Most people don't even know where Bhutan is, in the foothills of the Himalayas. Very nice mountainous kingdom. But she's as sympathetic a victim, but because it's abortion, nobody cares. And your story begins with Kermit Gosnell's abortion clinic. The only reason he attracts the attention of anybody is because, aside from killing babies, he also happens to have a kind of little extracurricular activity going on in pill dealing, and it's the prescription drugs racket that attracts the attention of law enforcement.
Actually it attracted the attention of one particular law enforcement officer, Jim Wood. Who is still an undercover drugs officer. It was him. He went in and he infiltrated the drug selling, and then the staff turned and started telling them about the stuff going on. And they mentioned the death of a woman, and he goes into his computer because anytime there's an unexplained death or an unexplained hospital visit by anyone in Pennsylvania, it's entered in. There's a police are called and it's notified. It's given a police number. He put in the name into his computer. No police report about any of these deaths. None. And he said this was unprecedented. He couldn't work out why. He then started investigating, just like out of Hollywood central casting, one cop accidentally.
And he really is as dramatic and as wonderful as all that. I mean, he really is, because he is a narcotics guy, and I mean, we all watch enough procedures to know that they're very territorial, these cops, right? So he's not a homicide guy. Yeah. He becomes obsessed with Carnamaya Munger, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's in the first chapter of the book. And we have a quote from Christine Wexler, who's the assistant district attorney, and she says, which I just think it's beautiful. It makes me, I get very emotional even saying it every time, and we know Jim Wood really well now. She says that this investigation wouldn't exist without Jim Wood. No. That he was a champion. He was her champion. He was Carnamaya Munger's champion. He was the only one.
And again, he's not an abortion activist. No. You describe in great detail what happens when they enter the clinic. And he comes across a jar full of babies' feet. And because he's not an abortion specialist, he doesn't know whether this is, he's creeped out by it, but he doesn't know whether it's something that is technically to do with abortion procedures.
Yeah, and he says he says it to the guy. He says, you know, is this normal?
Yeah.
And the other guy sort of says to him, look, I don't know what's normal. I've never been in an abortion clinic before, and nor had Jim. You're exactly right. They didn't even know, and that's why, interestingly enough, and again, this is in the book, but in that first night of the raid, they didn't take the feet. They didn't take the feet. They didn't take any of the bodies either, because they didn't really know what they were dealing with.
No, and the general condition of the clinic is very vividly conjured, because there's cat feces everywhere. He the Kermit Gosnell liked to have his cats with him in the clinic. Everything's dirty and unsterilized. When they have to call an ambulance to get one of the women out of there, the emergency exit door is actually blocked.
Yes.
There's garbage everywhere. They can't get a stretcher actually through the corridor. We hear all the time that the reason we need legal abortion is because otherwise we're going back to the back alley. This is the back alley. It's as dirty, filthy, dangerous as any of the back alley coat hanger horror stories that predate Roe v. Wade.
It's unbelievable. And there were so many inspectors went in. The National Abortion Federation, which is the kite mark for abortion clinics. They say if it's good. They went in and found it to be appalling, and wouldn't give the accreditation, but didn't report him.
Yeah.
No, you're right. This is worse than this is back alley. This you walk in, you would see that this is disgusting and appalling. But since then, there have been a couple of House reports and Senate investigations into the Planned Parenthood videos. And in the most recent House investigation, they talk about a Dr. Carhart in Texas. It's like reading the Gosnell case all over again.
Right.
So this is people have asked us, is he a rogue practitioner? And up until, we've only studied this, and up until then we thought maybe he is, maybe it's just a peculiar thing. No, there's clinics like it in Texas. We've also discovered New Jersey, Delaware, and New Orleans as well.
Well, you say one doctor who testified in the eventual trial, he said he'd performed, I think, 40,000 abortions.
40,000. It's a kind of an interesting detail in the movie. We've made a movie of this. In the movie, we have Janine Turner playing that role of that doctor, and we changed it in the script. We said 30,000 because we thought when people would look at Janine Turner, they'd say that's not actually possible. No. The truth is that in the trial, it was 40,000, and it also, the other interesting detail is this jury heard everything. Like, they just heard everything. They saw everything. They were visibly shocked, and they audibly gasped. No. They actually made a noise, because it's like, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, because we want to establish that you in fact should be the guy giving the evidence. How many did you do? How many abortions did you do? I've done 40,000. And they went, and it's suddenly, but you know what's interesting about that? What I think is interesting about that is when you think about the number of abortions in America, someone's doing them, right?
Yep.
Someone's doing them, right? And you don't know that many abortionists yourself, right? So there's not that many. So you end up with these people and it's a massive industry.
Factory.
It's a factory.
But it's I've worked hard since I was a teenager. You two have. I haven't done 40,000 of anything.
Yes.
I haven't written 40,000. I haven't done 40,000 television shows. I haven't done 40,000 newspaper columns. I've done 40,000. But when you think about it, when you think about it, that's like doing 1,000 abortions a year for 40 years.
Yes.
So the idea that there is any the legalized abortion means that people are getting counselling and getting and the doctor is able to devote time to their healthcare needs. That is just like bring next. Okay, gone next.
Absolutely.
Yeah, safe, legal, and rare. It ain't.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that there's all kinds of stories that come up out of this. I mean, one of the things is it's very lucrative.
Right.
These guys are making a fortune. And funny enough, in our travels, we met an abortion doctor actually in Aspen who has retired. And as we both know, wouldn't you love to be retiring to Aspen yourself? Right. So it's a great money maker. He was making a fortune, and Gosnell had a huge interest in money, and we know that from some of the quotes we had from some of the people that we spoke to.
Now, just to be clear, what's going on here, because the reason the media don't want to cover it is because for them it's not a mass murder issue; it's an abortion issue. But this guy He'd long since ceased to care about whether he killed the baby in the womb or he killed the baby in the room. And there's all these stories about the baby flailing for life. He actually boasts about the size of the baby he killed. There's a famous line he said about this one's big enough to walk to the store. And so he's complete, and he can do this essentially because Democrats and Republicans like Tom Ridge have basically told the healthcare bureaucracy anything goes in abortion clinics. They're completely unregulated. These guys can do what they like in there.
Yeah, they were the genuinely untouchables. As it says in the grand jury report, nail salons were being inspected every year, but the abortion clinic around the corner was not being inspected for 17 years. They were closing down restaurants for people having tummy bugs. Dead women were being literally carried out, Women were turning up at emergency rooms after botched abortions at 30 weeks, 32 weeks, 33 weeks, and people were reporting it. Doctors were handwriting complaints to the Department of Health. They were all being ignored. One bureaucrat took it very seriously and met Dr. Gosnell in a restaurant out of his clinic. Dr. Gosnell said, I run a good clinic, and he took him at his word. Case closed.
That's great. What I found is amazing, as someone who, if you've ever attracted the attention of the police, generally speaking, that when the police are in the room with you, that it's a very foolish thing not to do what they say. They're running the show. They say, we want you to sit over there, we're asking you this, we're asking you that. Kermit Gosnell, when the police raid his clinic, he says, I need to perform an abortion. And the coppers call the healthcare bureaucracy in Pennsylvania who say nobody has any right to prevent this guy performing an abortion, even in the middle of the police raid. I mean, this is absolutely astonishing. So the policemen want to question him, and he says, oh, just a minute, I've got like this baby I need to abort right now. In the raid, in the police raid.
Living in a time that we are, where the expert is being questioned, You have Jim Wood, who's a regular guy, a really lovely guy. He stood there as a regular man, not knowing a lot about medicine, thinking, sorry, by the way, I'm going to be so sensible here. This is wrong. Nothing should be going on here. There is cat feces on the ground. This place is disgusting. There's expired medicines all over the place. So he had the sense and the intelligence and the lack of political correctness, by the way, to say, you know what, we should stop everything here.
He had a stand-up row.
As you say, the bureaucracy said, no, well, technically, you see, technically we haven't filled the forms in. The thing hasn't been done. He hasn't been reported. We haven't, right now he is not actually under arrest. We need to and it's like, it's kind of an interesting thing. They should have stopped. Everything should have been stopped right now. I've just spotted some cat feces. I've seen a cat in a treatment room. Let's just stop everything till we work out what's going on. Let's get these women out of here and get them all to a hospital. No, actually, you know what? Harrisburg have spoken. Harrisburg said, let's keep on letting this man make his money.
Because as you say, we are supposed, and again, it's part of the times we live in, that we're supposed to defer to rule by experts, because the experts know better than us. In this case, the experts say, no, the cat feces doesn't matter. The unsterilized instruments all lying around don't matter. None of that matters. The fact that there's unqualified people here, one of whom has hepatitis C, operating on people.
And the elite is to 16.
It doesn't matter.
Let's keep on going.
None of that matters. You can break every single rule because abortion as a kind of sacrament transcends all.
And do you know what it makes me think about, Mark? I'm thinking about your viewers watching this are saying to themselves, because some of them are running businesses, right? They're running bars, for example. They're running a restaurant. They're thinking, oh my God, that they've had the health inspector in. They know exactly who we're talking about, and they're like going, oh my God, have we sterilized this? Have we sterilized? And they're panicking. And that person has walked into their lovely bar, their beautiful business, their family-run store, wherever it is in this country, and have been closed down. They know what they've been closed down for. They know what they've come up against. And here here's what we're describing, that night of the raid, it was a hellhole.
Right.
And he was allowed to continue with an abortion. And by the way, what's really interesting was the Department of Health were with him. There were nurses there. There were nurses there looking around and saying, no, we should go ahead with the abortion.
No, but
we had things that we're just doing like some rinky-dink television show here, but we've had the municipal government's health and safety people in because I think it was the flush was on the wrong side of the cistern of one of the toilets for handicapped access. So they shut everything down, and we can't bring able-bodied guests here in case you might need to use the bathroom, and the flush is on a non-handicapped compatible side of the cistern or whatever the hell it was. They shut us just for doing some we're not. If we were actually aborting some baby here on the sofa, they wouldn't bother with any of that. That's the message from Pennsylvania.
You're so. And by the way, this is this is why Trump was elected. By the way, because people are sick of this kind of thing. This story should elucidate for people the kind of I said it to Phelim because we're recent converts. I used to be very liberal, and this thing of big government. This is what conservatives have a problem with big government. If ever there was a case that told you what's wrong with big government. We got it right now. And in the book, I find it really amusing to just list all these departments, all these people who had responsibility for keeping the people of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania safe. And there's the number of them and the names of them, Mark. These lofty names. I am the supervisor for the quality health assurance for the and it was like, you are useless. You are worse than useless. This is a woman who sat in an office in Harrisburg, wouldn't get off her bum to go there and protect these people. Samika Shaw, 22 years old, an African-American woman. She's dead. And nobody cared. Nobody cared. And these are people, the most beautiful jobs you can imagine in Harrisburg, in a beautiful desk. And you've got a pension scheme, and you go home to your beautiful children, and your beautiful kitchen, and cook your lovely food, and have a lovely time, while people are literally dying here.
And the teenage girl is having her baby killed while with rusted instruments and surrounded by cat feces.
Correct.
The interesting aspect of this, as I said, there's three aspects of it. One is Gosnell himself. The second is the appalling behaviour of these healthcare bureaucrats, whom you name, and the fact that it's a racket to begin with, that abortion was transferred in Pennsylvania into home health care, which is patently ridiculous. But the third aspect is that when this came out, the media basically said, we're not covering it. There was the famous dismissal from the Washington Post.
A local story.
It's just a local crime story. Trayvon Martin's a local crime story.
Absolutely.
Michael Brown.
Yeah, Michael Brown's a local.
Michael Brown is a perfectly local crime story that everyone on the planet Earth has heard about forever and will never stop hearing about. A criminal who was shot in a confrontation with the police, and we'll all hear about it. But nobody knows who Samika Shaw is. Nobody's ever heard.
But when they do those local crime stories, like Michael Brown, it's not just about Michael Brown getting fatally shot. It's emblematic of racism and everything else. Kermit Gosnell killing. Well, we'll never know the number, but it's up over 100. Killing up over 100 babies is not emblematic of anything.
No, it's just a little local crime story. It's amazing. And Anne doesn't like me saying this, but Americans love serial killers, right? You look at your TV every night.
I don't want you to say love. I say fascinated.
Fascinated. Americans are fascinated by serial killers. Every night on TV. Law and Order, Criminal Minds.
We are those people. We watch those crime shows.
And so there's that angle that they love the serial killers, but also are fascinated with the serial killers. But also, you're right. This should be emblematic of lots of things. If Michael Brown is emblematic of something, this has got its all. This has got a national topic of conversation that's becoming more and more relevant. It's got the drugs. It's got most of his victims were minorities. My God, there's another one. It's got bureaucracy. He's killed more people of colour
than the worst police department in Missouri. So you would think that would be an issue to people
Also,
who think Black Lives Matter.
It's close to a major news place too. It's close. It's Philadelphia. There's lots of media there. New York. There's lots of media there. Washington. It's actually it's close to. So Kermit Gosnell, you're correct. He's killed more people than.
The problem with this, the problem with that narrative, the real problem with that narrative is recognizing that these hundreds, and it's hundreds, probably thousands, that they are people. That's the real problem here. Once you go there and say, oh, we've got hundreds of dead people here, then it means that those children were people, and that's where your problem is.
Well, again, one of the shocking things in the book is that you say that the state of Pennsylvania, in the end, only charged him with 7 murders.
Yes.
And they could have charged him with 107 or 207, but they chose not to because of what it would do to Pennsylvania's murder rate.
Correct.
So in other words, they'd have a political problem because the statistics would shoot up. If they actually gave an accurate tally of his corpse count.
Every city likes to boast now about its declining murder rate, and and the prosecutors wanted to throw the book, literally throw the book at him, and it came down from the police headquarters and other people saying, you cannot charge him with what you think he has done because it'll spike our murder rate, and we'll have this, we'll have to be explaining to people why Philadelphia is such a murder capital. So more political pressure to disguise what he did.
And in the end, it came to trial. They thought it was an important trial. I know this as someone who attracts legal attention from time to time. When I was in Vancouver, they moved the case to a bigger courtroom because they couldn't get all the press in. And that is what was supposed to happen here. They moved it to a bigger courtroom with a big press bench, and those press benches
were empty.
I happened to be. I went to the court case before the media went there. I was in Philadelphia for my fracking documentary, and as journalists...
Frack Nation, you can watch it on Netflix.
That's right, that's worth watching, Frack Nation.
As journalists do on their day off, I went to a murder trial, because I'm a crime journalist, so I went there. And I went in, and there are these pictures of his victims on the wall, being broadcast on the wall. The jury's looking at them, I'm looking at them, the most horrific thing I've ever seen. And the room is empty. Right. The room is empty. There's me and a couple of other sad people, really, who are interested in this. And it's like the Marie Celeste. It's the most horrific images I've ever seen with no interest in them.
No, but that is, because you're basically just some guy who happened to be in town and wandered in to get out of the rain. You weren't, everybody else had taken a, now, and you say you're a crime reporter. Yeah, you guys work for papers across the Atlantic, for the Sunday Times in London, which had a reputation as for having a brilliant investigative unit. What is the problem? And you've been here long enough to know that it's not like that in the US media. What's the problem with these papers that all of them decide collectively, instinctively, without anybody holding a meeting, all of them decide that this story isn't to be covered?
It's just pure politics. It really is. I mean, they don't want to go there. And, there's enough going on in the rest of America where they can decide there's something more interesting, but they just don't want to go there. And the journalists are all pro-choice, they're editors. There's no diversity of thought in these newsrooms, but they think they are. They think there is, and they're so proud of themselves, and they love themselves so much, and they love their.
I like that chapter in the book actually because we have quotes from them. I mean, some of them, the Washington Post apologized. I mean, the New York Times kind of apologized. They apologized, but then still didn't do anything. Anderson Cooper apologized, but then didn't really do that much.
No. Because Kirsten Powers in USA Today wrote a column saying, actually, this is a story even for liberals. Something evil is going on. And the evil is not just that there's one man killing babies. The evil is that our broader culture would rather he just kept on killing babies because there were political complications in objecting to
Correct.
the killing
Absolutely,
of babies.
yeah. And some of them admitted that. I mean, some of the commentators admitted exactly what you're saying, you know.
But they haven't learned their lesson.
No.
You know, and I don't think that they have admitted that they did wrong. I think they say, oh, we messed up on that one. I mean, the Planned Parenthood videos
Right.
are a very similar story, and what's come out since then is even more. I mean, I wrote a piece about it. The Senate did an investigation. Did you know you can buy the skin of a Down syndrome baby in America for $320? Now that is an unbelievably, from a journalist, a fascinating detail that you can buy actual baby parts for it costs $120 to FedEx and Priority overnight, though. Just to let you know, packaging, posting.
Okay, that's actually half the cost of the actual baby part is the shipping. Yeah, because there's something, and again, because of your background, you know this. Abortion is supposed to be a live political issue here. In most continental countries, abortion means first-term abortion.
Absolutely.
And if you know, I think it's Norway or I think most Scandinavian countries, if you want to get it later than that, you've got to get 2 doctors to sign off for it. And that actual figure from one abortionist, he himself has personally performed 40,000 abortions.
Yes.
That's more than the total abortion rate of several, medium-sized European nations.
Yeah.
I mean, what is the political controversy over abortion? Has it just driven Democrats and liberals, as we saw at the post-Trump demonstrations, where Scarlett Johansson, Ashley Judd, these people would basically leaping up and down for abortion. If we've got any volunteers in the crowd, I'll perform an abortion on you right here. I mean, it's driven liberalism into a degree of absolutism on this that's very different from that kind of utilitarian, incrementalist thing they have going in Scandinavia.
I think it's really interesting, that point that you're bringing up. I think, I think very few people know this. So American abortion policy can only be compared to some of the most scummy places on the planet. So the Europeans aren't anywhere. They have nothing at all like what goes on here. So people, and I love telling people this. I mean, because I think we need to be telling people, you can have an abortion in America at 40 weeks. So the day that you are meant to be going in to have the baby in a hospital, but you can also get that baby killed that day too. And that's the law here. That is perfectly legal in America.
That's a constitutional right, according
absolutely, and it's very
to
important.
our judges.
But I think one of the things that we learned through this, I mean, and there's so many aspects to this, but I think very, very few people know that. And this is why this case has not been reported. Because once you report this, you have people having their cornflakes in the morning, as people do, and they're saying things like, "Oh my God, honey, did you just read this?" And then, "Honey, do you see what he says there? It says that here," and I'll tell you how I know this to be true. The 2 assistant district attorneys who were most involved in this case, Christine Wexler and Joanne Pescatore, when they got the case first, they sort of looked at each other and said, "By the way, what's the law here? You know, what's the law here?" They didn't know, so they got their, the little person to run down and bring up the statute. Then they read the statute, and they told us this. We put it in the movie because we think it's so important. And they read it. 24 weeks, and they're both mothers, those 2 ladies, and super smart. They look at each other and go, "That's 6 months. You can have an abortion at 6 months." They didn't know that. If those women don't know that, do you think anyone in Pennsylvania knows the law? And we know for a fact, and it's very interesting, when people do know the law in America, they don't like it. So the jury, who were hand-selected, none of them were pro-lifers, all of them thought the law should change.
Right. And do you think Scarlett Johansson or Ashley, all these liberals who say, "Oh, America," like the Bernie Sanders line, America should be more like Denmark. Try getting an abortion at 40 weeks in Denmark.
Good luck with that.
Do you think all these, the people cheering Cecile Richards of Planned Parenthood in Washington over the weekend, do you think they're aware of that?
No.
Well, I don't know. I have a thing about Cecile Richards, and I don't know. I mean, I really love telling this story. I mean, so I it's like, you look at like your friends or whatever, and people that you know in your life, and you think, so I don't know anyone in my life like Cecile Richards. And I'm just trying to think, who does she know in her life? Like, who does she hang out with? Because here's who she is. She's a person who gave an interview. So she's a happily married woman. She earns about $1 million a year. Nice one. I'd like that. I'd like that salary. So about $1 million a year, which is a good salary for America. I mean, it's very cheap to live here. So that's great. So Cecile Richards is earning $1 million a year. She has 3 children. She's happily married, by the way. I'll just emphasize that again. And her children, the 3 of them, are the center of her world, according to her. And then she gets pregnant. She thinks, you know what? No, 4, no. So she says in an interview, we got rid of the other one. We aborted the 4th. And I'm just thinking, I don't know what world she lives in. I don't know who she hangs with and goes out on play. Who does she know in her world that thinks that that's okay to talk like that? I don't know. I don't get that. And it's not like obviously there's no money issue. It's like, do you know what? No, 4, not so much. So I don't know people like that. And you know what? That's how divided America is. Because I don't know people like that. But she knows enough people like that to still have friends.
No. It's there's a very strange. But I think you're right that actually not a lot of people who claim to be pro-choice actually know about this 40-week thing. The most fascinating part of the book, though, is this man, Kermit Gosnell. When the details came out, there were a lot of us who said he at one point he had 20 jars filled with the feet of babies. And some of us said at the time that this is just because he liked it. There's no medical reason for it. It was his kind of trophy room, in the way that if you go into the certain kinds of bars and pubs back in the old country, there'll be a jar of pickled eggs on the counter, And he had them. Instead of pickled eggs, he had a jars full of babies' feet. You got to know Kermit Gosnell.
Yes.
You visited him in prison. And you've kept in touch since. What's he like?
Well, he phones me all the time. Actually, he doesn't get many visitors. So
he used to phone me, and I got so creeped out with it. I
got the number then. Well, he's the most relaxed man in prison. It's like he just came in from a round of golf and stopping off at the club for a G&T. He's very relaxed. Laughing. He has his problems. The poetry class in prison was full. He didn't get into this year's poetry class.
That's tragic.
He plays in a band.
But the band are great. They jam together.
The prison, actually, when we visited him, it was a low table like this, and I was sitting here and Anne was sitting there, and he came in and he sat right opposite Anne and put his legs, straddled her, and then spent the rest of the interview doing this.
Yeah, which is, again, one of the weirder parts of the book. He was like inappropriately tactile.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what moves him into the serial killer territory, because he in some way or other, he has that charisma, and in the way that this weird collection of unqualified people who were his nursing staff were devoted to him, and several of them were in sexual relationships with him. And when he met you, he was evidently confident at some level that you'd fall for his charisma in the same way. Is that why he put his hand on your leg?
I don't know. I think he's very controlling. I think he's very clever. I mean, I have a detail in the book about it. I mean, we were there for about over 2 hours. And we wanted to stay there in a sense, because obviously we needed to hear his story and stuff. But it got to a stage where I thought, I think he's very clever. I do think he's really clever. I think he's really good with people. And he started getting disgusting, and I won't say what, but it's in the book. But he got kind of very disgusting at the end. And I thought he's doing that to embarrass Phelim. I thought he's getting into this women's stuff, menstruation stuff and all that. I thought, he's doing this. He knows exactly what he's doing.
Right.
And I thought, you know what? You're not going to mess with my husband. And I just said to him, you know what? Oh, my God, look at the time. We have to go now. And I just stood up. I thought, I've heard enough at this point. This is 2 hours later, and we had heard enough.
Yeah, but you'd heard more than enough, because as you mentioned, he plays in a band in prison. He told you that he instead of aborting all these babies, he could have been a concert pianist. He actually sang you Jacques Brel's My Fellow Belgian. I'm flying a lot of flags of convenience today. My fellow Belgian, Jacques Brel, Ne me quitte pas, if you go away on a summer's day. He actually sang that to you in prison.
Rather close to my face. Yeah, I mean, he started this thing about, and as I said, it's like you're in a bar, you literally think, where am I here? This guy has this very mellifluous, very soft voice. does this all the time, smiling all the time. And you know what's wonderful about being here. You know, like because I'm asking him like, what is it like being in prison? Because of course, you know, to most regular people, the idea of going to prison, it's just a nightmare to be deprived of your freedom. Like it's just every kind of the worst nightmare. It's worse than death, I think. And so he's sort of sitting there, and I'm saying like, what's that like? And he's going, you know, well, you know, I've worked so hard. I've been so busy, you know. I've just been so busy. And this is great because now I've got a chance to kind of, you know, because I know I love music, you know. I love music. Starts going into the whole thing about music. And one of the composers for the movie, Boris Elkin, who's a very dear friend, he had said to me, ask him about music, ask him about music. Because obviously music tells you a lot about people. And he said, you know who I've discovered since I've been here? I've discovered Jacques Brel. And of course, I love Jacques Brel. I've always loved Jacques Brel. So I'm sort of sitting there, and I'm stiff as a board. I'm like pushing myself back into the wall all the time because he's right in on top of me. And he says, what's the song? What's the song? And he does this kind of thing with his hand on my knee. What's that song? What's that famous song? And I'm thinking, and then I thought, Ne me quitte pas, through kind of gritted teeth, and he went, Ne me quitte pas, right into my face. And I'm sitting there thinking, are we going there? He's singing now.
Yeah.
Is it? So he did that, and he did it twice. He sang that, and then he also sang the school anthem from the high school that he'd been at, which is a famous high school where Bill Ayers went to school there too.
Right, but as you say, at a certain point you've had enough of him, and there's an element of manipulation.
Yes,
I'm sure it's actually, you know, I don't know what you. Every time you hear Ne me quitte pas, if someone's singing it on the radio now, you know, Sheen Easton made a record. If you happen to hear Sheen Easton's version of it, Kermit Gosnell comes to mind.
Yes.
Yeah. But do you have any understanding as to why? Because there's no sense of remorse.
None.
Any more than when he ran the clinic, he's supposed to give like a period for the prospective mothers to reflect and think
and to change their mind. He had a 24-hour rule.
And he didn't want the 24-hour thing. He would just boom, boom, boom. Yeah. He wanted to hit his 40,000.
Correct.
Because that's where the big bucks are.
Yeah.
And there's no sense here that he feels he did anything wrong.
No, he says history will vindicate him. Has been in fact, he thinks he will get out. He's appealing. He thinks he will get out. He's in training in prison because he wants to run a triathlon when he's released. No, there is no remorse because he's done nothing wrong. So why would he feel sorry for it?
The day that he was arrested, that Jim Wood put the cuffs on him, and Jim talks about that. I mean, it's just great. Jim says, like, there's a great satisfaction for a cop when you put the cuffs on somebody, and he put the cuffs on Gosnell. And Gosnell famously said, and we use it also in the movie, so this is what happens when you try to help people.
Right. Now, you've made a couple of references to this movie, and we should mention this. You've got Dean Cain,
yes,
who's going to be starring in it's not a documentary, you've made a feature film. Because frankly, I mean, the book, you mentioned in True Blood, the great Truman Capote novelized non-fiction, really a great classic of literary non-fiction. You're making a film about this precisely because when you read the book, you think, oh my God, these are like very vivid novelistic details.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, with respect, you know, a couple of Irish chancers wash up in Beverly Hills.
Guilty.
You know us. You know us.
You know us too well.
Why aren't Universal and Paramount and Warner Brothers beating the door down to get to this story?
For the very same reason that the Washington Post didn't want to report it, for the very same reason that the New York Times didn't and CNN didn't. This brings up a lot of very inconvenient facts about the world and a very inconvenient things about America. As I said before, I think when people know what actually goes on here, when people realize what the law actually is, they don't like it. And I don't know how I think Planned Parenthood are geniuses, by the way. I think they're geniuses for managing to run such a successful company that does all these abortions, and no one knows about them. Nobody knows. People know Planned Parenthood and whatever, but they don't know what's going on, and they don't know how many abortions are being done, and they don't know what it is that's being aborted.
I mean, we're intelligent journalists, I like to think, and know lots about lots of things. Until we really started working on this book, we didn't know what an abortion was, actually. You know, I think
we always thought it was a kind of we were those people. We're the typical liberals. We thought it was a bunch of cells. But I can tell you, having seen the
clump, the zygote.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned the baby in the toilet. I mean, that was baby D. There's baby D. There's baby A. Baby A was born and died on the same day, the 12th of July, 2008, and was my father's birthday. And I just feel like those children who we try and also in the book tell their stories, because Phelim makes. You make your point, because I love this point that Phelim makes about the babies.
Well, I mean, I think, everyone has a story, and, some people live till they're 75 and never have a big story. These children lived for a few seconds.
Or longer, 20 minutes in some cases.
And they lived such a short time, but actually, and it's very important that they had a story. They had a very important story, because they've got that guy in prison. And they've brought this issue to a whole lump of people who didn't know it. So they had their lives were very short, but their stories were very, very important, and we're so happy to tell their story and just to tell that little bit of their life.
And as you say, they don't have names. They're just baby A, baby B, baby C, baby D, but they're all specific.
Yes. Yeah.
And they all have detail in their short lives, just struggling in a toilet bowl while a monster is trying to kill them. They do actually all live vividly as individuals, which is what's so weird. But just finally, to return to something we touched on earlier, because it bothers me, this. And I understand people lie to themselves about abortion.
Yes.
And the question of, and they make it angels dancing on a philosophical pin. At what point does life begin?
Yes.
Does life begin at the moment of conception? Well, that's a tricky question, but let's face it, it doesn't look anything like you and I do. And that's the deal they've made in continental Europe, where sometime in the first trimester, a few weeks after you discover you're pregnant, the problem goes away. That's how they did in Germany, France, Italy, Scandinavia. What's going on here is monstrous and wicked, and you read this book, the details feel dirty. You're in that clinic with the poorest women in our society. The number of times you use the phrase where someone had this abortion, that abortion, the sort of thing Cecil Richards says is fine, and then eventually you meet a guy and you'd like to have a baby with him and you can't get pregnant. Your insides are all torn apart and ruined, and you can't have a baby. Meanwhile, there's this vast corpse count. The media don't report it. There's something profoundly wicked at the heart of our society that we don't care about it.
I don't think you can care about things you don't know about, though, Mark. I think general society would care a great deal if they knew about this. And unfortunately, we have the mainstream media, and I hate saying that phrase because it just sounds so whatever. But because people don't know, I mean, I didn't know, and I do know, and I'm changed by it. I don't think people are wicked, but I think that there are wicked people. I think the general population aren't wicked, but I think there are people who are involved in a massive cover-up here. And because of writing this book, we've met some extraordinary people. I have met people who used to work in the abortion industry. I've met workers who write to me all the time who have had a kind of a come to Jesus moment. And I think I think the wickedness, the real wickedness is in people who don't. I just think journalists not reporting the news is an extraordinary thing. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous for everyone, And I don't know, beyond that, I mean, I genuinely think people don't know. People do not know that you can have an abortion at 40 weeks. I've had a row. Do you remember that row, Phelim? So I had a row with this woman one night, and it's actually worth saying it. Without getting into too many details.
She used to work for Ted Kennedy, right?
Okay,
I said that, but she's great, right?
She's great. But anyway, and she's from Pennsylvania, so she knows Pennsylvania really well. And I just kind of casually, because I knew with her, obviously, her position and whatever, so I don't want to fight. Every time I go out, I don't want to fight with people.
But she does.
But I decide I won't fight about loads of stuff, and then when I come to one particular thing, I think, okay, gloves are off. I'm not going to listen to this now. But anyway, this thing came up, and what is it you're working on again? So of course I said, oh God, here we go. So I started telling her, and I said, and it was like it's 24 weeks in Pennsylvania. And she stood there and like, what are you going to do in a pub? I don't know. And by the way, here's the question. What do you do? Standing in a pub, and she's saying to me, that is wrong. You are wrong. You cannot have an abortion at 24 weeks in Pennsylvania. She is highly intelligent.
Right.
And I'm there with my pint of beer thinking, what do I do here? Do I have to produce the statute out of my handbag?
No.
So maybe I should have the statute in my handbag. But she would not accept it. Now, that tells you where we're at. So there's no information.
Yeah.
And I've always said, when I go around the country talking about this, I just say to groups, every group I've gone to, I've said to them, will you just do one thing? Instead of putting out your photographs of the terrible photographs of the babies, just tell people in the state that you live in what the law is. Let them know what the law is in their state. Let them know in Colorado that you can have an abortion at 40 weeks. Let them know that. And let's see what happens then.
In Kansas, you can have...
and in Kansas and and New Mexico. And people should know that.
Yeah. Because his Gosnell's defense, when he was accused of performing abortions after the cutoff date in Pennsylvania, was to say, no, I just shipped them to my pal in Kansas.
Correct, yes.
Which is, but it is, you're right, that people don't know, and whether that's just because the media keep them in ignorance or because at a certain dark, furtive level, somewhere in the back of their mind, they've decided they don't want to know.
Well, there's a little bit of that.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of that going on. But it's, I have to say, in writing this book and working on this case and the whole thing with the trial and everything and reading everything and looking at all of the evidence, the only thing that I can ever think of to compare it with, and we mentioned it obviously a lot in the book, is the Holocaust.
Right.
And it's that whole thing again, in that question that you've just asked, of did you see the smoke? What the hell did you think the smoke was? Like, what do you think the smoke was? You're in the middle of nowhere here. What was that smoke that was coming out of that place constantly? What did you think they were burning? It's a bit like that. It's like a bit like that. You've heard that there's 50 million. Like, what do you think it is that they're killing? Like, what it is? Because, by the way, you just yesterday, you went to see your sister. You saw the ultrasound. What do you think it is? And you saw that 3D ultrasound now. You've seen, what do you think it is that they're killing? Like, what do you think that they're killing?
Well, this is why we think abortion is becoming less popular, is because of the ultrasound.
Oh, yeah, the technology.
Technology. And the millennials are actually less pro-abortion than their parents or grandparents because they were brought up looking at their brothers and sisters, in the womb. And
it's the first picture in the baby book now is actually from inside the womb, which is new.
And I don't know what liberals do because it's very funny. I mean, I've got I know a friend of mine who'd be very, very pro-choice, and I know that when his wife got pregnant, he read Great Expectations, and I'm thinking, to the baby, right? And I'm thinking, why? Why would you? By the way, I think it's a lovely thing, right? But I'm like, but why would you do that?
No.
Why would you do that to a nothing, to a zero, to something that to something that has no value? And that's what he did. And he chose music so carefully. He was thinking Mozart, and I'm not making fun of him. I actually think it was a beautiful thing. That's how much in love he was with his baby. But you can't have one without the other. You can't have it both ways.
It's a powerful book. I knew this case. I was one of the few people who followed this case day by day as it was unfolding. But there are details in this book that I didn't know, and they are vivid details. You are great storytellers, which is what you do in your films, and this is a great story and a horrifying story. The book is out today. It's called Gosnell, The Untold Story of America's Most Prolific Serial Killer. And thanks to, published by Regnery, and thanks to Phelim and Ann for telling us about it.
Thank you.
Up next. Yes, indeed. This is the part of the show where you respond to all the big issues we talk about. War, terrorism, societal decline, civilizational collapse. So let's see what's on your mind this week. This first one comes to us from Richard Henry via Twitter, who says, great shows, great talents, great guests. A suggestion well meant, buy longer socks. So Richard isn't interested in civilizational collapse, just in the collapse of my socks. This is what he's referring to. Yeah, I'm showing a bit more leg than I intended to there. The reason there, Richard, actually is not the length of my socks, but the length of my trousers. I bought a suit in Germany this summer. I went into a very nice bespoke menswear store in Germany, and they measured me, and I said, wait a minute, you're finishing the trousers halfway up my leg. And they said, that's where all the guys are wearing them now. Where have you been? Look at James Bond. Daniel Craig, look at that image on the left there, where his trouser leg finishes. Look at the break of his trouser leg on the right. That's Daniel Craig, 007, coolest guy on the planet, and he wears his trousers at half-mast, halfway up his leg. So that's what all of us have to do. Now, I don't even know. Can I get this? Can I get this? Whoa! Oh, no. There we go. Showing more leg than the Rockettes did at the inauguration. That's the world we're living in. All the suit legs now finished. Let's have a look at what these other designs. Look at these things. Look at these guys are walking in. Guys, eventually trousers are turning into shorts. You can't do it. I could try and correct this problem by getting knee-length socks and sock garters. By the way, if you know a good sock garter retailer in northern New Hampshire, do let me know, because they're kind of hard to find near my pad. But that is the way all trousers are going to be. It's part of the infantilization of our society. So it is a big issue. It's part of the infantilization of our society, in which grown men in full-length trousers are turning into schoolboys walking around in shorts. So I apologize for going the Daniel Craig hipster route. As I said to the nice lady in the German menswear store, I don't think I'm really cool enough to carry this off. And as a result, the continuity person on Spectre and Skyfall, they use CGI to color in Daniel Craig's calves when he's flashing a bit too much leg, but we don't have that technology right here on our show, unfortunately. From Walker, who tweets, turned off episode 3 on CRTV when you pushed Warren Report fallacy on JFK. I didn't actually know what Walker was on about here when he mentioned this. But if you recall, we were actually talking about the movies in our last weekend show with Kyle Smith, and we were talking about all these right-wing conspiracy theories they made in the early 1960s. 7 Days in May, the Manchurian Candidate. And I pointed out to Kyle Smith that this was a bit ironic, considering that in the end, John F. Kennedy was killed by a communist. I didn't mention the Warren Commission. I didn't mention anything, go into any detail about JFK's assassins, but I happen to believe he's a communist, and not, as all the conspiracy theories say, that he was killed by some secretive right-wing conspiracy, because frankly, the right-wing aren't cunning enough to pull off that kind of thing. You happen to disagree, Walker. Good for you. Good for you. But let me just address your general point, if you're still here, because you switched off the show, not because I mentioned the Warren Commission or went into any detail, but just in a passing aside to Kyle Smith. This show is not in the business of confirming what you or anything happen to believe 100%. If you want to do that, you should do the Walker Show. You should go into your man cave and host the Walker Show every night of the week and tell yourself what you already agree with 100% of the time for a full hour each night. There's too much of that in television, radio, all around, on the internet, all around the world now, where people just are content to live in self-reinforcing ghettos. And the only way anything changes is through the power of addition, not subtraction. If you only want someone you agree with 100%, eventually you're going to be sitting in a room with yourself. This show is in the business of persuasion and addition, not subtraction. The point is to persuade enough people in free societies that you get to 51%, that your view becomes the majority view. That's how you change things. So there is never going to be a show in which you agree with 100% of everything I say or everything my guest says. And that's how it should be. And if you only agree with 80% of what I say, think yourself very lucky. But we're in the persuasion game. And the minute you're not in the persuasion game, then you might as well give up and sit in a room and talk to yourself. From Marion Booker. Marion Booker emails, you'll recall that last week, several loyal Canadian viewers noticed that we fly Canada's Red Ensign here on our set at the Mark Steyn Show, and so we had a little letter about it, and we had a kind of preliminary round of our forthcoming quiz show, Know Your Ensigns, where you'll be eligible to win the fully loaded Prius. We've already had the jingle made, as you know from last week. No, 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 your ensigns. And I'm pleased to see, after suggesting that Americans, to whom ensigns are alien to their entire cultural tradition, I'm pleased to see that American viewers have been getting into the spirit of Know Your Ensigns. And so Marion Booker emails from Conroe in Texas and goes, Mark, I am stoked about studying ensigns, and paused your CRTV program to grab my 3x5 note cards so I could do the blue ensign and red ensign while they were fresh in my mind. Then I went in search of the authoritative list of ensigns. I'm from Idaho, Marion explains, but a naturalized Texan, so not sure what to call it, dude. I was in needing hip waders before I got past Wikipedia. I want that fully loaded Prius, so maybe you could just whisper to me where best to start my studies. Well, thank you very much, Marion, and I'm glad you're getting into the spirit of Know Your Ensigns. As I said last week, you should always start very basically with just your basic blue and red ensigns. For example, whoa, get that thing off the screen. No. Get it off, quick. I hope Phelim and Ann didn't see that one. That's the only green ensign. And that can that can be a wee bit controversial back in Phelim and Ann's hometown. So I hope they're safely in the car on the way back to the airport after that. As I said, just start with we'll be a while before we get to that one. That's the only green ensign as far as I know. We're gonna start with your basic red and blue ensigns, but even that can be more complicated than you might think. As soon as the Canadian flag was spotted on our set, a couple of very observant viewers, follow me and let's take a look at this, because it's easier to show it to you. A couple of very observant viewers pointed out that this is not the current red ensign. This is the 1922 red ensign. And how do you know? Because they've got the green maple leaves on them. And in 1957, they changed to the current red ensign, which has red maple leaves on. So that's got your green maple leaves on them. And I happen to like the 1922 ensign. It's what Canadian troops fought under in the Second World War. But so we ordered up. We thought, oh, people are going to make a fuss about this now. We don't have the right red ensign. So we ordered up a copy of the 1957 red ensign when they changed the maple leaves to red. By the way, don't ever wear it like this at home. It's a great breach of flag protocol to wear the flag as a sarong. So don't try this. Whatever you do, don't try this at home. But as you can see, they changed the maple leaves to red. So I was thinking we'd hang this one on the set, and then I noticed a big mistake, because if you see the Irish harp here, these are Canada's 4 founding peoples: the English, the Scots, the French, and the Irish. And the Irish harp, the other change they made in 1957, as you can see, this nice Irish lady on the end of the harp, her dress has unfortunately fallen off, so she's showing her breasts. And in the 1957 version, they took the topless woman off the harp. Don't you hate it when governments just take all the fun out of life? The Canadian government took the topless woman off the harp. They did it in Ireland too, by the way. Ann and I were talking about this in the green room, and Ann said that's when the party ended. They took the topless woman off the Irish harp. But so this version of the red ensign that we went and bought is actually some kind of illegal version of the red ensign that's still got the topless woman on it. So I don't know whether we should fly this. We like green leaves and we like topless women. But there's people who prefer red maple leaves and no topless women. But if you like your maple leaves red and your Irish women topless, then you've got a problem, because it's completely inconsistent, and this is an illegal ensign with which we will have no truck. Finally, let us not forget that our pals, our cousins down under in the lucky country, in Australia are celebrating Australia Day. I always lose track of the time difference because when it's yesterday here, it's still tomorrow down there. I don't know how that works. It's a Southern Hemisphere thing, I think. But in honor of Australia Day, let's take a look at Australia's great blue ensign and national flag. Yeah, look at that. That's the way it looked back when it was invented. And here, for Barry, there's a question. That rather looks like the Star of David they've got under the Union flag there. That's not, in fact, it's the Commonwealth Star for the 6 Australian states. And if you look at the new Australian flag, like the one in our studio, they've got 7 stars on it because they added a 7th. I think it was for Papua, in fact, which a lot of people don't actually think is terribly Australian. And the rest of the flag, of course, is the Southern Cross, which has been a symbol of Australia ever since the first days of British settlement. So happy birthday to all our Australian viewers, and we hope they celebrate in fine style. If you've got a view on any of the issues, from socks to ensigns, do tweet us at Mark Steyn Online, Facebook us, also Mark Steyn Online, or do it the old-fashioned way via email, mailbox at marksteynshow.com, and we'll use more of your comments next time on Mark's Mailbox.